Hey everybody, it's Robert from Black Belt Gaming. I hope you're doing well. I'm planning to do another video here on Alternity, rules for modern to far future role-playing games. And in the previous video, I sort of introduced the main dice rolling mechanic used in the Alternity game system. But let's take a look at it in a little more detail. This was the main chart I used in discussing the dice system last time. You have a D20 over here coded or colored orange, and that's called your control dice or your control die. And then as you get bonuses or penalties, you roll a situation die. And remember, you are going to be rolling dice and either adding the numbers together, or you're going to be rolling something that might be a bonus to you and subtracting the smaller die type from the larger die type, unless you're rolling something that's really good for you, which is 2d20, and rolling and subtracting 1d20 from the other. So remember, rolling low in Alternity is preferred. Something I didn't mention last time was called an automatic success. And it's actually the opposite of what a lot of modern players playing D20 type games are used to. They're used to rolling 20s and seeing that as a good thing. The Alternity is opposite of that. Actually, rolling a 1 is what is preferred. Even if you're about to fail a task, if the main control die, that main D20 that you're rolling, comes up with a natural 1, then you succeed. It's just a basic success, nothing fancy, just an ordinary success. However, it doesn't work 100% of the time. The rolling of the 1 doesn't save you all the time. If we go back over to the penalties and bonuses chart, and if you are rolling and things start to get seriously difficult for you, and if the penalty gets to a point where it's 5 steps, meaning you're going to be rolling a d20 plus another d20, then at that level or higher, rolling a natural 1 is not going to give you that automatic success. It's just beyond luck. It's just very, very difficult to do. So the 1 there isn't always going to help you. How about rolling a 20 though? A 20 is actually not what you want. That's going to be a critical failure. So when you make a die roll, and even if things are looking great and you roll it and you get a natural 20, that's bad. You fail your task, and not only do you fail it, but it's a critical failure, and that means something else bad happens along with it. For example, the book gives you here some guidelines. It could be that your gun jams, your whatever key you were working breaks, anything. A computer can freeze. All kinds of different bad luck things can happen. So critical failures can happen when you roll that natural 20. And it can even come up when there is a situation where you are not really in the normal situation of making a pass or fail. Sometimes you're trying to find out how quickly or how efficiently you can do something, and it's not kind of a standard success or fail situation. If you're in a situation like that, and you're just trying to get something accomplished, and you're trying to find out how well you succeeded at it, if you roll a natural 20 in that situation, you may not get the failure. It's just counted as an ordinary, or what is it, marginal success, just a basic success, but something bad still happens. And that's why in the book this is called not only critical failure, but also in those situations where you can't outright fail, it's called the bad luck rule. So we took a look at some character templates last time. I think I had the camera focused on the combat specialist, and today it's on a diplomat. We talked about the ability scores, what a resistance modifier does, and we took a look at what this untrained level does. I need to clarify some things here. Let's go down a bit to the skills. We took a look at some sample skills, and we saw how rolling low is preferred. And what I want to talk about today is broad skills and specialty skills. A broad skill, it's going to come under a category related to your ability score. So let's say Constitution. The broad skill under Constitution is called Stamina. And a specialty under that is Endurance. When you're making a broad skill check, these typically don't increase. The specialty skills can get ranks and improve. But just a general skill, a broad skill, doesn't increase. It stays at its basic level there. When you're making that general skill or that broad skill check, you do suffer a one-step penalty. That means you're rolling your D20 and you're getting a D4 penalty along with that. So you're going to roll a D4 and add that to whatever your D20 roll is. When you're doing a specialty skill, you are specifically trained in that area and you don't suffer that D4 penalty to the check. So it's just a straight D20 roll unless there's a situational bonus or penalty you must be dealing with. Another time that you're going to be rolling that D4 penalty is when you're doing something untrained. So let's say that you don't even have the broad skill in something, but you want to try, and it's something that you could attempt. That's going to be a roll that's going to be half of your ability score. So that already makes it difficult. But you're also rolling that D4 penalty die along with it. So to get rid of that D4 penalty die, that one-step penalty dice, you need some specific training. There's one other thing that I didn't mention last time. What if something is not specifically related to a skill, but is really more connected to the ability score? That is actually called a feat check. Feat checks are right here. Sometimes an action your character attempts is not directly related to a specific skill. In such cases, success or failure is determined by the result of a feat check. To make a feat check, you roll a d20, the control die, but you still have to deal with that pesky plus d4. You still have that penalty to it. Of course, other conditions can modify the situation die, making it worse or better. If the die roll is equal to or less than the hero's ability score, then some degree of success is made. So now we have a bit more information on the character sheet and how to even handle some roles that might not be covered by the character sheet. Let's take a look at some other things that we didn't quite talk about enough last time. One of these is the action check score. This is like an initiative roll. It determines who goes first. And in an action round, there are phases. Amazing phase, good phase, ordinary phase, and marginal phase. So what you're attempting to do with your action check score is roll a d20, and you don't have to use the d4 penalty die. This is just a straight d20 roll. And you compare it to your action check score and see where it comes up. You're also taking a look at how many actions per round. Most of these templates are coming up with 2 actions are capable in a round. This is going to determine which phase you take your first action. So let's say you roll really well and you get a 2. You're actually going to be able to take your action during the amazing phase. So you're amazingly quick to react and get to go sooner than most of the other characters and enemies. Now, all actions that happen in the amazing phase are kind of resolved and considered to happen at about the same time. So what if your enemy also gets this amazing result on their action check score or their action check roll? Well, it is possible that you could shoot your rifle and they could shoot their rifle. You could hit each other and deal damage to each other and kill each other. So it doesn't really matter. It's not really determining who or which one shot the other one first. They're both going to be resolved at the same phase in the round. Now, if you happen to shoot and do damage in the amazing phase and kill them before they could take an action where they had been ready to go during the good phase, maybe their action check was down here, then yes, you definitely shot and your damage is resolved before they ever got to act. But if you guys are acting in the same phase of the round, then yes, you could potentially kill each other. So what about this second action? You take one of your additional actions in one of the phases following the phase where you could take your first action. And sometimes you may want to do something specifically first before you take another action later. Being a science fiction game, there is an aim rule. So let's say you make your action check and you get a good. You may want to spend your action in the good phase aiming your rifle. And then you can take your next action in a later phase and shoot your rifle. But you're going to get a +1 step bonus. And that's because you spent one action aiming. 2 actions per round for most of these templates. What if your action check happens and you roll rather high on the d20 die? Well, that means that you weren't fast enough to really take 2 actions in that round. You were a bit slow. You were a bit distracted, whatever circumstances came up. You could only take your actions in the marginal phase, and then the round is going to end. So just one action for you there. But what if you wanted to aim? What if you were trying to aim and you only came up in the marginal phase? Well, you can still do it. You can take your action in the marginal phase and start aiming your rifle, but then things carry over into the next round, and everybody makes their action checks again. And then, when it's your turn and your phase comes up to take your first action, then you can make your shot and apply the aim bonus when that shot takes place. So we've got these different phases, but what if your character really wants to do two things at the same time, in the same phase? Let's think about what something like that would be. One example, maybe you've already thought of, is attacking with two weapons at the same time. Another one might be leaping over a chasm and firing a weapon. Let's talk about that one. You can't really, maybe you don't want to break that into two separate actions. Maybe you're needing to attempt to do two things at the same phase, during the same phase. Well, you can do that, but there's going to be some penalties there. You're going to make it more difficult for yourself to succeed. So you need to choose what is sort of the primary focus and then what is secondary. So let's say you're trying to leap over a chasm and fire a gun. Well, maybe you definitely don't want to fall. So maybe you want to have that leap to be where your energy is focused the most. So since you are attempting to do two things in the same phase, the first action, the primary action, is going to receive a +2 step penalty. So let's say you're starting with a control die of a d20. You're going to go up a d4 and a d6. You're going to be rolling a d20 plus a d6 and looking at the result. The secondary action gets an additional 2-step penalty to it. It becomes a 4-step penalty. So you go from a d4 to a d6 to a d8 to a d12. You're going to be rolling a d20 plus a d12 for that one. So yes, it becomes difficult, but in some special situations you may really want to try two actions at once. So what about attacking with two weapons at the same time? It actually follows the same rule. You just choose which is your primary hand and which is your offhand. So your primary attack is going to get the +2 step penalty, and your offhand attack gets the +4 step penalty. So what if somebody wants to assist you doing something? Well, the person that's assisting kind of needs to know how to assist. So this is not something that can be attempted if they are untrained. So maybe you're trying to do some kind of research or working with some sort of computer system. It could depend upon whatever the situation was. They're attempting to assist you in completing your skill check. What they do is they attempt to make their own skill check with the related skill. And here is how it resolves. If they get a critical failure, then they're going to give a +2 step penalty to the lead character who hasn't yet made the roll. If they get a regular failure, well, they're just kind of in the way and they give you a +1 step penalty. But if they get a success, then they're going to start giving you bonus steps to your roll. If they get an ordinary success, they're going to give you a -1 step. A good success is -2, and amazing is a -3. Just the basic note again here. To assist, a character must possess at least the broad skill being used. An untrained character can't assist in an action, but a trained character can try to coach an untrained character through an action. For example, the pilot on the ground giving instructions by radio to an unskilled passenger who's trying to land an airplane. Isn't that neat? So if you're skilled and you're talking to somebody who has no idea what they're doing, you can still attempt to help them out. But somebody who has no idea what they're doing can't really help you with what you know how to do. And that's one of the reasons I like the Alternity game. I know we're talking about a bunch of different rules and die rolls, but one thing I always liked about this system is it just made sense. It just kind of clicked with me. Some systems do and some systems don't. And for me, Alternity was one that maybe I didn't remember every specific single rule, but when I read through the rules, they often kind of made sense to me, and I liked that. Now, I don't think I touched on this at all in my previous video. Last resort points. These are something that you can use to help you out with your die rolls. A last resort point can be spent to alter the result of any skill or action check. Let's bring you back up here to the top. All the way to the top. Okay. Changing a degree of success by 1 grade. So if a hero wants to improve his success, they can spend a point to change from a good result into an amazing result. But you can also spend this when your opponent may get a good result against you, and they're taking a shot at you and got a good result. You can spend, since you're directly affected by this, you can spend a last resort point to change their good success down to an ordinary result. So, heroes and members of the supporting cast can have last resort points. The Game Master Guide has details on how last resort points are assigned to the supporting cast. So there are some rules and restrictions for using last resort points. I don't think we'll go through all of these, but just one basic one is that only one last resort point can be spent to alter a skill check or an action check. This one is kind of important. The use of a last resort point is declared or must be declared after the die is rolled, but before the results are applied. For example, if a villain rolls an amazing attack, the hero must declare the last resort use to change it to a good result before the villain calculates their damage. So that's just something to keep in mind. You can change the result and then you roll the damage results. Here's another interesting one. A last resort can be spent on a critical failure. Let's say you rolled that 20. It can alter the outcome to a failure. So you're changing it from a critical failure to just a regular failure. So you're trying to avert that bad luck. Some of you may be familiar with Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition. And there was something in that edition which a lot of people really enjoyed. It was called a skill challenge. In fact, I've noticed some people that play 5th edition have attempted to port over the skill challenge system from 4th edition into 5th edition. Well, something like that already existed in Alternity years ago, and it was called a complex skill check. One roll usually wasn't good enough. You were trying to accomplish something that took multiple successes to achieve. Let's take a look at this little chart here. How many successes do you need might depend upon how complex the skill check is. So if it wasn't too bad, you might just need 2 successes to get it done. But it can go up to 10 or more. And it's set by the Game Master. And then this here is determining what kind of situational modifiers might be there by how difficult or how easy it might be to accomplish this set of roles that you're attempting. One thing to understand about the die rolling here is that when you get an ordinary result, an ordinary success, it counts as 1. And if you get a good success, it counts as 2. And if you get an amazing success, it counts as 3 successes in your progress. Failing. Well, failing is basically down here. 1 or 2 failures along the way are fine. It doesn't mean that you've failed the task. It just means you're slowing down, you're not progressing as fast as you want to. However, as soon as you get to a total of 3 failures, then you have failed the skill check, the complex skill check. Remember how Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, when it was first in its first, implementation of the skill challenge, they kind of adjusted the number of failures that you might need to have in order to fail, and how people pointed out mathematically how that didn't work out so well. And they revised it to a much more solid system that 3 failures are what you have to get, and then the skill challenge is over. Alternity already had that. 3 failures, and you've failed it for now. The game master might determine that it's permanently failed, or if it's temporarily failed, or whatever, but 3 was the number. The number of successes you might need can differ, but 3 failures, and yep, you didn't do it. So what happens if you roll that 20 and get a critical failure? Well, it ruins the complex skill check. Critical failure, rolling a 20, it messes you up. So maybe a last resort can help you there. But yeah, rolling a 20 is going to mess the whole progress up, and it's failed. Perhaps the last thing I'll cover today is when a character is competing against another character and you're trying to accomplish something. One is directly attempting to use the same skill against the other. Typical example could be arm wrestling or something like that. Well, you have the characters make their checks, whether it's some sort of feat check or skill check or whatever it may be. Then you have them compare what degree of success they achieved, and the one that got the better degree of success wins the confrontation. So as we move down a little bit here, direct competition, there could be modifiers to this, but amazing success beats a good, good beats an ordinary, ordinary beats a failure, or marginal, and critical failure indicates an immediate and significant loss. Now, if the contestants both get the same level of success, then another check must be made, and that's simple and straightforward. Well, in finishing up, here's kind of the basics of what I talked about today. A feat check is something that's not specifically covered by skills. It's going to be equal to your ability score, and you're going to need that D4 penalty to be rolled along with your D20. If you are untrained in something, and you're untrained in a specific skill, then you're going to be using half of your ability score, and you're also going to receive that plus D4 penalty to the roll. If you're using a broad skill, or other games tend to call it like a general skill, a very broad skill, giving you multiple specialties underneath it, then it's based on your ability score, and you get your D4. And then finally, this is the best one, you have a specialty skill, something you are specifically trained in. There's no base die to be rolled. You're just going to be rolling your D20. And you're going to use your ability score plus your rank of training. And that's where most of your skill rolls are going to happen there. Well, I think I'll wrap it up there for today. In the future, I'd like to go through some things about hero creation and some of the different species you can play in the sort of default setting of the Alternity game system. But anyway, I had fun talking about it today, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. I'll catch you later for some more Alternity.